Alright, so in this video we are going to do the odd numbers. So let's take a look at number 1. We need to factor completely. So what should we do first here? Take out of 5t cubed. So anytime we're factoring, we want to see what can we take out. That's the first question we always ask ourselves. What can we take out? So we're dividing both of these by 5t cubed. So what are we left with? T squared minus 64. Now this 5t cubed stays on the outside, and can we factor t squared minus 64 anymore?
Yes.
Yep, because it's two perfect squares. So what are two factors of 64, of negative 64, that add up to 0? Negative 8 and 8. So we put t minus 8 and t plus 8. Can we factor this anymore? No. So this is our answer. Any questions? Alright, let's look at number 7. So again, factor completely. What's the first thing we ask ourselves? What can we take out? So what can we take out? 2p6. So then what are we left with? P cubed minus 8.
And since this is a cube, we do the a minus b times a squared plus ab plus b squared.
Awesome. This is a perfect cube. So what's our a and what's our b?
A is p and b is 2.
Awesome. A is p and b is 2. B is 2 because 2 times 2 times 2 gives us 8. So 2 cubed is 8 and b cubed is this. So now we just plug it into our formula. So we have that 2p6 stays out front. Our formula when subtracting cubes, so I'll write it here for you guys. We have a minus b times a squared plus ab plus b squared. So this is when we are subtracting our cubes. So when we have a cubed minus b cubed. It's a different formula when adding your cubes. So when you have a cubed plus b cubed, that formula is a plus b times a squared minus ab plus b cubed, or b squared. So these are your two different formulas. You have one for adding cubes, one for subtracting cubes. So here, we're subtracting cubes, so we're plugging it into this one. And we just plug in a and b. So we have p minus 2 times p squared plus 2p plus 4.
So when it comes to like the negative a, you don't take account of the negative a when you do like the 3 negative side of the 8.
Right, you don't take into account that this is a negative 8, it's just 8 and you plug it into this formula.
Okay.
So the only reason why you look at this negative sign is because it tells you to use this. Any questions on that one? Alright, let's look at number 11. So we have to factor completely. Again, how do we factor this? We can group them. Anytime we have 4 terms, we think to ourselves, can we group it? What do you do if grouping doesn't work? Right, P over Q and synthetic division. But here, let's see if grouping works. So what can we take out of our first group? M squared. What are we left with? M minus 2. And what can we take out of our next group? negative 16, and what are we left with? M minus 2. So the insides of our parentheses are the same, so grouping worked. So what's our next step? Awesome. Put the outsides together and then the insides together. Can we factor this anymore?
Yes.
Yep, because we have two perfect squares here. So anytime you're subtracting two perfect squares, you can factor more. Only when you're subtracting. Doesn't work when you're adding. So do we have two factors of negative 16 that add to 0? Negative 4 and 4. So here we would put m minus 4 and m plus 4 times m minus 2. Any questions here? All right, let's look at 15. Again, we are factoring completely. What's the first thing we should do here? We can take out a 2. What else can we take out? T squared. So we're taking out 2t squared from everything. So what are we left with? Awesome. T to the 6 plus t, 3t cubed minus 10. So now we can see if we can factor. Do we have two factors of negative 10 that add to 3? Wait, which one's negative? So positive 5 and negative 2. Perfect. So we have 2t cubed that just stays on the outside. What's going to go into our parentheses?
Wait, what is it to 3?
Oh, my bad. It's supposed to be 2. It just stays the same. So 2t squared stays on the outside. What goes into the parentheses? How many t's total do we have? 6. So how many t's have to go here and how many go here?
T cubed minus 2 times t squared plus 3 plus 2.
Perfect. We split up that t to the 6th power into t cubed and t cubed. Because that way when we FOIL this back out, we still have 6 t's that we started with. Can we factor this anymore?
No.
Nope. So we are done. Yep. Right, because this is just asking us to factor completely. So yeah, that's our answer. Any questions on this one? Ready for the next? Let's look at 17. So determine whether the binomial is a factor of the polynomial function. How can we determine if this is a factor? Awesome, synthetic division. So what goes on the inside? 4, negative 15, negative 30, and 25. Are we missing any terms?
No.
Nope. Always check and see if you're missing any terms because you got to have all of your exponents represented here. But we're good. We're not missing anything. What's going to go on the outside? Plus 5. Awesome. You changed the sign. So positive 5 goes on the outside. Now we use synthetic division. So we drop down the 4, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, add. We get 0. What does that mean? So yes, it's a factor. For these questions, you have to use synthetic division to determine if it's factor. All right, any questions on 4.4? All right, let's go to 4.5. Number 1, we need to solve. So what should we do first to solve?
Divide by x squared.
Perfect, we can take out an x squared. Can we take out anything else? No. So we can't take out any numbers here because all three of these, 4, 12, and 9, don't have anything in common. So we can only take out an x squared. So then we're left with 4x squared plus 12x plus 9. What do we do next? Awesome. So we multiply the first and the last together. So remember, anytime you start with a number that is not 1, when factoring, you have to multiply the first and the last. So we get 36. Now we need to see, do we have two factors of 36 that add to 12? 6 and 6. So we have this x squared that stays outside. What goes inside of our parentheses? X plus 6 and x plus 6. Can't forget that we started with a number that was not 1, so what do we do with this 4? Divide both of our numbers on the inside by 4. Can we simplify this? We can't? Do 6 and 4 have anything in common? Awesome, it would be 3 over 2. So when we can't simplify it any further, we take the 2 and move it out front. So we end up with 2x plus 3. The next one is the same exact thing. It simplifies to 3 over 2, so we would end up with 2x plus 3. All right, now we do what? What's next? Set everything equal to 0. Because here we are solving. On the quiz, on the test tomorrow, make sure you read the directions, and if it says to solve, you got to do one step further than factoring, and you actually have to find what x is equal to. A lot of people on the quiz just factored and forgot to solve. All right, so in our first one, what's x equal to? 0. The next one, what do we do first? So 2x is equal to negative 3 divided by 2. So x is equal to negative 3 over 2. Our third equation is the same exact thing, so we're going to get x is equal to negative 3 over 2. So our two answers here are 0 and negative 3 over 2. It's okay if you put it twice. Because technically, we have 2 zeros, and we have 2 negative 3 over 2's. So that's where we started with 4 as our highest degree. We have 4 answers, but 2 of them repeat, so we technically only have 2. Any questions here?
So when you multiply the first number with the back number on there, that you can only do that if the number is not 1, right?
Right. You only need to do that if the number is not 1. If the number was 1, then we can just factor like normal and say, what are our 2 factors of 9 that add to 12? But here, since our starting number was not 1, we have to multiply the first and the last together.
Okay. So, but like, would that count if it was just like x2 or something, like just by itself, that then we just factor normally?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, let's look at number 3. What should we do first here? Perfect. Our first number is not 1 again, so we have to multiply the first and the last together. So we get 16. So now what are 2 factors of 16 that add to negative 8? Negative 4 and negative 4. So what's going to go into our parentheses? Perfect. Awesome. And the same thing, q squared minus 4 over 16. So since we started with q to the 4th power, when we broke it up, it has to be q squared and q squared. And then we started with a number that was not 1, so we had to divide both of our numbers in our parentheses by that 16. So, awesome. When we simplify, it'd be 1 over 4. So since we have 1 over 4, what do we do with that 4? Perfect. We put it in front of the q squared. So we have 4q squared minus 1. Alright, and then the next one's the same exact thing, so we're going to have 4q squared minus 1. What did the directions say here? Solve. So we're not done yet. So we need to do what next? Awesome, set them equal to 0. So 4q squared minus 1 is equal to 0. And 4q squared minus 1 is equal to 0. How do we solve this? I'm just going to move it over here so we have more room. But we plus 1 on both sides, so 4q squared is equal to 1. What's next? Divide by 4. So q squared is equal to 1 over 4. What's next?
Wait, where did you get the 4q?
Because we simplified this to 1 over 4. And then if it doesn't simplify anymore, we move it here.
Oh, okay.
Alright, so we take the square root, so then what's q equal to? What's the one thing you can't forget when you take the square root of both sides? Plus or minus. And then what's the square root of 1? And then what's the square root of 4? 2. So we get q is equal to plus or minus 1/2. And then since both of our little equations here were the same thing, we end up with the same answer. So our 2 answers are positive 1/2 and negative 1/2. Alright, let's look at number 7. Find the zeros of the function, then sketch a graph of the function. So first thing, let's find the zeros. What should we do first? Awesome. We want to take out a negative 5x squared. That way our starting term becomes positive. So what are we left with now? Awesome. X squared minus 4x minus 12. So we divided everything here by negative 5x squared. All right, now we need to factor. So do we have two factors of negative 12 that add to negative 4? Negative 6 and positive 2. Awesome. So we have x minus 6 and x plus 2. What do we do next? Set them all equal to 0. So we have negative 5x squared is equal to 0. X minus 6 is equal to 0. X plus 2 is equal to 0. So for the first one, perfect, x is going to be equal to 0. But I'm going to leave it as x squared is equal to 0, just because when graphing, we need to know our multiplicity. So I just want to know that I have two x's that equal 0, so I'm going to leave it as x squared. The next one, we add 6 on both sides, so x is equal to 6. And then we subtract 2, x is equal to negative 2. So for this one, we have to graph, so we need to know our multiplicity. So how many zeros do we have? 2. So is our multiplicity here even or odd? Even. If our multiplicity is even, does it touch and turn or go through? Touch and turn. How many 6's do we have? 1. So is our multiplicity even or odd? Odd. So if our multiplicity is odd, does it touch and turn or go through? It goes through. I'm going to say it crosses. But cross is the same thing as go through. How many negative 2's do we have? 1. So is our multiplicity even or odd? Odd. So do we cross or go through? Cross or touch and turn?
Cross.
We cross. Alright, so we're going to put a dot at 0. I'm going to change the color here. So a dot at 0, a dot at 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll get, that's the next step. So next, we need to see what is our end behavior here. Even and negative tells us what? Even means that they go in the same direction or opposite directions? The same. And if it's negative, it goes what? Down and down. So since it's negative and our exponent is even, we go down and down. So at our farthest left point, we're going down, and at our farthest right point, we go down. And now we just connect the dots with our multiplicity here. So we need to see at what point are we going to touch and turn, and what point can we cross. So at negative 2, are we crossing the x-axis? Yeah, so we cross. At 0, do we touch and turn or cross? Touch and turn. So we touch it and turn. And then at 6, we cross. So we're going to just cross down at 6. So this is what our graph looks like. There will be a question on the test where you have to graph. So when you graph, you got to find your zeros. You have to know if your multiplicity touches and turns or crosses, and you have to know your end behavior. I'll write that down for you guys. So step 1, find the zeros. Step 2, know whether your multiplicity makes it touch and turn. Or cross. And then step 3 is the end behavior. So you have to know these 3 things to graph.
So if it was negative x,
Scarver.
we'll go
Now, 1 second, Franco's asking a question. So Franco asked what would happen if we had negative and odd. So let's say we had negative x to the 3rd power. Odd means that they go in opposite directions. Negative means that it ends to the right, so that means it starts going up. So it ends going down, starts going up. So this is just an example of negative and odd. Oh, so like this one. Nat, what was your question?
How do you know if it's a cross or a touch and turn?
So if your multiplicity is even, it touches and turns. If your multiplicity is odd, then it crosses. And remember, multiplicity is how many times that number is our 0. So here, since we had x squared, that means we have 2 zeros, so that's why our multiplicity is even. So that's why it touches and turns. We only had 1 6, so 1 is odd, so that's why it crosses. Does that make a little more sense?
Yeah, I think.
Any other questions about graphing? All right, let's look at 13. So we need to find all the real solutions of the equation. What can we do here? We can do synthetic division with P over Q, but maybe we can try something else. We have 4 terms here. So what's the first thing we want to try if we have 4 terms? Grouping. So let's see if grouping works. What can we take out of our first group? X squared. And what are we left with? 2x minus 3. What can we take out of our next group? 9. So then what are we left with? 2x minus 3. So our insides are the same, so grouping works. So we don't even have to do P over Q. So what's our first parentheses? X squared plus 9. And our second one? 2x minus 3. So the outsides go together, the inside goes as 1. And we are trying to find the real solutions here, so we got to solve. So what's our next step? Put them equal to 0. So x squared plus 9 is equal to 0. 2x minus 3 is equal to 0. So now let's solve x squared plus 9. What do we do first? Subtract 9. So x squared is equal to negative 9. What's next? Square root. What's the one thing you have to remember when you take the square root of both sides? Plus or minus. And what's the square root of negative 9? 3i. Perfect. We take the negative out, it becomes an I, and the square root of 9 is 3. Good job. What does the question ask us for? Real solutions. If we have an I in our answer, is that a real solution? No, it's imaginary. So this one doesn't even count. But we still have this one to solve. So let's see what our answer is here. So what should we do first to solve 2x minus 3? Add 3. So 2x is equal to 3. Then what? Divide by 2. So x is equal to 3 over 2. So this is our only answer here because we only have one real solution. The other two solutions were imaginary. And this question asks us for real. Right, it's imaginary because it has this I, and the question asks us for real solutions.
So if I was just plus or minus 3, that would be a solution.
We would have no real solution. So x is equal to plus or minus 3 is a solution, but it's imaginary, and this question asks us for real solutions. If it asks us for all solutions, we would list all three of them.
So for it to be a real solution, it has to be in one.
It can't have an I in it if it's a real solution.
Yeah, that's what I was asking, like if it was a plus or minus situation with no I, would it be a real solution?
Right, if it was just plus or minus 3, that would be a real solution.
Oh,
Because it's the I that makes it imaginary. Alright, we have 10 minutes next. So let's look at these are easy. So number 1, we're identifying the number of solutions, or zeros. So how many solutions do we have for 1? 4. How many solutions do we have for 3? 3. Remember, we just look at the highest exponent. That tells us our number of solutions. So then we're done. Number 5. Find all zeros of the polynomial function. So I'm going to do 5 over here. How can we factor 5? We have to use synthetic division, so we have to do our P over Q. So what are all of our possible factors of our last term? 1, 2, and 4. And these are the plus or minus of all of them. What are all of our possible factors of the first term? Just 1. So these are all whole numbers, 1, 2, and 4. So that's what we're going to try. What goes inside of our box for synthetic division? 1, -4, 3, 4, and -4. What do you want to try first? Let's try -1. So we drop down the 1, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, and we get 0. Yay! So what does that mean? -1 is one of our 4 answers. So x is equal to -1. Now what should we do? Make it a polynomial. So what do we start with? X cubed. So this is 1 x cubed minus 5 x squared plus 8 x minus 4. Can we factor this? No, so what should we do if it doesn't factor? Can we group it? Yep, we can't group it. So what happens if we can't group it? We do it again. So what are our factors of 4?
2 and 4 and 1.
1, 2, and 4. So what's going to go inside of our box now? Awesome. We take all of our coefficients of our new thing here. And what do you want to try first?
2.
2. So we drop down the 1, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply. And we get 0 again. Yay. So 2 works. And now we're left with x squared minus 3x plus 2. What should we do next?
If you could group it back there, then that would be your answer.
Yep, if you could group it here, then you could group. But grouping wouldn't work because we couldn't get the same insides.
Yeah.
But here, we can factor. So what are 2 factors of 2 that add to -3? -2 and -1. So we have x minus 2 and x minus 1. Remember, these are equal to 0, so we still have to solve. So x minus 2 is equal to 0. X minus 1 is equal to 0. So what's x equal to? Positive 2 and positive 1. So our next two on the list are 2 and 1. So these are 4 answers here.
But you need to write them twice.
You don't have to write 2 twice,
Okay.
but you would just have to make sure you have negative 1, positive 1, and 2.
Yeah. How do you know if you can group or not? Like.
So you can try to group. So like anytime you have 4 terms, you want to try and see if grouping works. But here, I'm going to rewrite it up here just to see. So x cubed minus 5x squared plus 8x minus 4. So if we group our first two, group our second, what can we take out of the first two?
2. X2.
X squared, and then what are we left with?
X1 and minus 5.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then what can we take out of the second group?
4. Negative 4.
Negative 4. So then what are we left with?
Negative 2.
Negative 2x plus 1, because we have to include that 1 there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So,
Okay.
because we're dividing by negative 4, so what's negative 4 divided by negative 4?
1.
1. Yeah, so it doesn't just go away. We have to put that 1. But are the inside of our parentheses the same?
No.
Nope, so we cannot group. So if the
Okay.
insides of your parentheses are not the same, can't group.
Thank you.
Welcome. Alright, there's not going to be a question like 9 or 10, so I'm going to skip those. But I'll have them, I'm going to put a PDF of all the answers for you guys too, so if you have any questions about them, you can check it out there. But let's look at number 11. Man, we have 4 minutes, so let's see if we can get this done. Are we missing any zeros here that's not explicitly given to us?
Yeah.
What are we missing?
3 minus 1.
3 minus I.
Oh, yeah.
So anytime we have an I or a square root, we need its conjugate. So we need a plus or minus I and a plus or minus square root. So anytime we see an I or a square root, we need to have the conjugate. Alright, so what do we do next?
You know x minus 2.
So x minus 2. And then what comes next?
X minus 3 plus 3 plus I.
X minus 3 plus I. And then we have x minus 3 minus I. What's the next thing we need to do? Distribute. So the x minus 2 stays the same. Then we have x minus 3 minus I and x minus 3 plus I. For the test, I am not going to make you FOIL all of this out. You're just going to leave your answer in factored form like this. Merry Christmas. So you don't have to, everybody listen. You don't have to multiply this all out for the test. You can just leave your answer in factored form.